I'd like to apologize for keeping you waiting. We had an earlier meeting that went over, and we need to take a brief break. With that, I'd like to welcome you to this Community Redevelopment Agency CRA meeting this Thursday, October the 7th, and it is now 6:25. With that, could we all stand together as we give our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? Here.
Member Finney?
Here.
Member Askew?
Here.
Member Trace?
Here.
Vice Chair Davis? Member Logan?
Here.
Okay. The first item on our agenda is the approval of our August the 5th, 2021 meeting minutes. Could I have a motion for the approval of these minutes?
So moved.
Have a motion from Member Matheny and a second from Mr. Trace. Do we have any corrections before we vote for the approval?
Does it matter if my name's spelt wrong?
No. Would you like to spell it correctly for us?
Well, correct. For some reason, just on that one, it's L-O-A instead of L-O-E.
Motion to approve correcting the spelling of Mr. Loading's name.
With the correction of the correct spelling of
Thank
Mr.
you.
Loading's last name.
Thank you.
I don't accept that.
Are there any other corrections? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And it carries. Brings us to new business. Our first item is a revised preliminary plan for the downtown parking garage. Before we do that, would you like to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to
Staff member?
introduce our new CRA specialist. And Deirdre Shaw comes to us from the city of Kissimmee, and she's a great asset to our team. She's a world traveler. We spent some time together at lunch today, and I learned a lot about her. So welcome to the team. I want to present the CRA board, who also sits as the city council. Thank you.
We are so delighted to have you. We look forward to working with you. With that, we'll now go to the downtown parking garage review.
I have to take this up. My name is John Davis. I'm the city architect, and I wanted to introduce Mr. C.T. Shu and Renee Alvarez, and they can introduce the rest of their people as they give you the presentation.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you. First, we are honored to be here. We really very, very much excited about
you state your name,
serving
please?
with the city. Thank
Could
you.
you state your name?
My name is C.T. Shu. Correct spelling is H-S-U.
Good.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Renee Alvarez. I'm senior planner and designer with CT Shu and Associate Architects. And we were asked by the city to study the feasibility of constructing a garage adjacent here to City Hall to take care of some of the parking issues that you'll probably be running into now with some of the expansions that you're going to begin to see, not only with the entryway and then future expansion of the facility here. So we took that upon us. We brought a team together, and today we have with us Matthew Connolly with Walker Engineering that has done plenty of parking structures and is assisting us with this, as well as the folks from Osceola Engineering, Richard Clare and Mr. John Moody. So they're on the team, and we have some folks here on the ground so we can understand what is occurring here in downtown. So I'll just go through some of the outline here of what the goals were. We were looking at a 4 to 6 story parking structure, starting from 10th Street, moving towards, moving basically north from there, 300 to 400 vehicles, including retail at ground level, and integrating some dumpster enclosures for the establishments that are already there along the alley, including drive-through to maintain the connection between 9th and Massachusetts Avenue to get across, because you have cross-access now, and you'll also be using some of the parking that you already have, and include a pedestrian bridge that would get you from the garage over into the expanded City Hall eventually, and include enhanced architectural detailing and massing to be able to basically conceal the garage structure as much as possible to make it look more like a city building, not just a garage, and also be able to expand as necessary, and mostly that would happen toward the north in the future. I'm sure you're familiar with the site in general. It's just here west of City Hall proper, and basically what you see in the diagram, there's 3 phases that we've kind of looked at, but basically concentrated on phase 1. That's where the retail would be located, mostly along 10th and Massachusetts, basically. And then the rest would be parking, transition space, and the ramping to be able to come upstairs. You can see the position of the future bridge. Estimated now, since we don't know what the design might look like, but certainly being able to cross directly to the new facility there. The retail and the pedestrian bridge would enhance that situation and cross over that space. So if you would, just a little bit of.
Richard Clark with Osceola Engineering. From a site standpoint, just to touch on the existing infrastructure is there. You've got your sanitary running through the alleyway area. You've got water running along Massachusetts, so you're good there. You do have a high voltage line that runs what basically was in the formerly 9th Street right-of-way that we have to be very cautious of and avoid any impact to. From a stormwater management, we have an existing stormwater pond that everything goes to up in the north. There's room to expand that pond. And then from a landscaping standpoint, you've got your foundational requirements and your street tree requirements. The imagery that's shown actually is shown with the proposed improvements for the 10th Street, improvements for the landscape, so you can see how that relates.
Good evening, everybody. Just want to repeat what CT and Renee said. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm Matt Conley. I'm the Director of Consultants for Walker Consultants out of the Tampa office. To talk a little bit more about the parking, we came up with 4 different concepts for 4 and 6 level garages. You can see up there we got a parked on ramp concept and what I'm calling an express ramp concept. One of the goals we were given from the city was to not have any parking on ramps, and our express ramp concept does achieve that goal. We thought, let's take it one step further. Let's look at maximizing the parking and actually park on those ramps, and that's what the parked on ramp that's what the parked on ramp concept achieves. Both ramping systems are adequate for the current phase and for the future phases of horizontal expansion, so we're not building any more ramps in the future. All the ramping is contained in this initial phase. Neither one is really better from a ramping capacity standpoint. There's just more parking in the parked on ramp concept. It is a little less user-friendly, though. More sloped floors, a little harder to understand where you're at in the garage, but still will function just fine. Just to talk about a few of the features we were able to put into the garage. We have a dedicated accessible parking area right there on the ground floor, right as you enter. Have direct access over to that pedestrian bridge Renee was referring to. Dedicated stair and elevator tower right there near the pedestrian bridge. People on upper floors can come directly down over to the pedestrian bridge and get over to the new City Hall expansion. We're keeping those people from walking through the alley and avoiding conflicts with cars with that pedestrian bridge. And it was a really great feature we were able to integrate into the design. We were requested by the city to provide retail and mixed-use spaces on the ground floor, which we've done. We actually played a little bit with the city ordinances to bump out that retail, create some interesting appeal of the garage, and kind of still get that parking on the ground floor. So we're very excited about what we were able to do there. Same thing with that mixed-use space on the very south portion of it. We're able to have parking above that and bump it out and kind of create some interesting visual appeal. I did just want to mention with any garage, there's 2 predominant types of construction we can look at. It's either going to be precast, pre-stressed concrete, or cast-in-place post-tension concrete. Our layouts are assuming a precast layout. Does not mean they could not be converted to cast in place if that's something the city is interested in. Really, the biggest difference between the two is cost and speed of construction and durability. Cast in place will be a little bit more durable, a little bit slower to build, a little bit more expensive, and precast will be faster to build, have lower upfront capital costs, but will require more maintenance down the road. So, thanks.
And I'd like to stress that what we're showing you today is conceptual. Between now and when a garage stands there, many things will happen, I'm sure. And basically, we went through and took a look at what the architectural effects would be here, and looked at first some regional examples that we've seen, the multi-story garages, and how they have been sort of basically decorated to give a different type of appeal to the street. We looked at historical local references and what we might find there, and we found that there's several arcades along New York, and we want to incorporate the arcade sort of feel also here so that the retail had an area of arcade in front of it, allows shade, allows for folks to gather, and also then articulates the facade by changing the volume a little bit of a straight facade. So we were looking at that. So we did a series of studies, these are some of them, to see how the language of that architecture could be modified along the way. We have several facades, different ways to approach those. And basically what we came up with for this particular study, and to be able to get some numbers for you, looking at the use of traditional materials and articulation, horizontal layering of the building, having a base, a center, and a top of some sort that's distinguishable. Also in the vertical bays, looking at creating some kind of rhythm that allows us to sort of understand that that is a building and not just a garage, and stepping back. So we did that basically on 10th with the arcade, and along Massachusetts by popping out the retail. These are just ideas that are conceptual to get the square footage that we're at. We or somebody that may come to work on this project will be able to develop a whole nother series. So this is really to see if this is feasible here on site. Along the alley side, this is where you would have the bridge that would come across, and the articulation there would be a little bit different because we have the ramps sort of on that side. But we were also looking at bringing in some green screen. There's the possibility of doing that as well to cover some of the facades, because it's very difficult to give the architectural character everywhere. You have to concentrate your architectural character in specific areas, and that's something that can be studied further, where really you want to dedicate those dollars to enhance the building itself. And in terms of the volumes, this is a graphic that we pulled together to show sort of the future expansion of City Hall in terms of its size and location, and then the relationship of the garage and its size just to the west. And the little red crossover is the bridge that you see there, and then you see the pop out of the the arcade there on the south side of that facility. So this would be sort of the completed volumetric. How that is filled is still needs to be worked on, of course, from a conceptual standpoint. We had Clancy and Thays Construction, as well as Walker Engineering, run estimates on what might be the conceptual cost for something like this. Again, this is based on the 6-level parking. So we're between 11.9 and 12.4 million. This, of course, needs to be tightened up. This is at this early level, we have conceptual costs. There's some optional enhancements which were discussed, which is the parking guidance system. So folks that come in know where the spaces are available, and there's different ways of achieving that. The use of photovoltaics on the roof to bring some energy and sustainability to the facility, and also the idea of having electric vehicle charging stations, most likely at ground level, that could also be included. So this is where we are in terms of the study itself. There's a couple other things that we have in there as well, but this is the gist of what we've been able to discover at this point. Have any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Lodi?
Just want to make one comment. While we're building a facility like this and we're putting retail in along there, if there's one thing I hear from the store owners time after time is like when we get large crowds downtown, there's people always looking for restrooms, and some people probably cringe, but that's something else that the city would have to clean and security-wise and everything. But is that something that possibly can be incorporated into that corner by the stairs or something? I don't know. Just a thought. Just a thought.
Absolutely. In terms of space, yes. That just needs to be planned for and incorporated. Then it's a maintenance issue, and who's responsible for that, yada, yada, yada. But,
Exactly.
yeah, no, sure.
But it's a thought. I just want
And
to throw it
the
out
retail
there.
establishments themselves would have that, the infrastructure for that is already included in the cost for restrooms.
Councilmember Matheny?
I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
So the $12 million is probable cost, 11.9 to 12.4, that's for the entire build-out?
That's for the first phase.
That's just phase one?
Right, yes.
So typically I've seen like a cost per parking space. Like what does that work out to be, and is that fall within like a normal range?
This gentleman.
So we have a number of unique features in the garage that are going to affect the cost of it. Obviously, the retail space is going to kind of bump up that typical parking, cost per space we would typically like to see. The other thing that could bump up the cost per space is going to be the use of those express ramps and no parking on those ramps. It's essentially just wasted space. It's just ramping and you're not parking on it. So because we have two options for it, you can run the math either way. I unfortunately don't have a calculator in front of me, but I think we gave this is for the 6 levels, correct? 11.9?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we had 392 for the express ramp concept, and we had 453 spaces for the parked on ramp concept. It would simply just be taking that number and dividing it by the number of spaces. That would give you that cost per space. But I believe it's right at 25,000 a space is what we're at right now with this estimate. And a typical garage, at least a couple of years ago, was easily 18,000 without all the bells and whistles on it. There's quite a bit of market volatility right now, though. Prices are escalating. It's just the reality of the market, so they change rapidly, and it is a little difficult to exactly predict what it's going to be moving forward.
Okay.
So I averaged it out real quick of $12 million over, between those two is 425 spaces, is 28,200 per space.
Okay.
And
So-
that includes the architectural
Yep.
enhancements as well. So
Correct.
it's not just a plain garage, we're looking at the treatment of the facades and so on and so forth.
Okay. And I don't know how the rest of y'all feel, but I'm not in too many parking garages where there's ramps that doesn't have parking on it. I mean, I don't know why that's a directive of the cities, and maybe there's a pros and cons I don't know about. But also, I thought it was unusual to have like two-way driving through the whole parking garage, because normally, the parking garages I do, normally it's like a circle, like you always turn right, except on the ramps. The ramps are two-way, but everything else. And so I don't know if that provides any cost savings or what. I'm not sure why we're directing that. But,
Unless there's some lost driver who doesn't know which way to go.
The reason for that in this particular case is that the width of the lot is only a 2-bay. So you have to come back to that ramp to be able to come back down, or else you're using a lot more ramping. We're establishing a flat area and then ramp, which is more user-friendly, versus having 2 ramps that are trying to zigzag. You'd always be on an incline, always be on an incline. That's just one way of creating the parking.
because the parking garage I have at work, it's like the ramp is in the center.
Right.
And it's two-way ramp, and you
Yes,
just,
and then you go both sides.
and you're always just going right.
Right,
You always
right.
just go right. And then I know Councilmember Askew had mentioned before, like, events and things like that, if we could have the parking decks have like a flat area, so that if, there was an event, that they could use that space sometimes. I don't know, I won't speak for Mr. Askew, but I don't know if that's been conveyed to you guys. The 300 to 400 parking spaces that, the goal was for the parking garage, is that based on like a parking analysis that says that's how many parking spaces we need? Like, where did that number come from?
I think that was just a goal to test the site. So to get to that number, we've had to go up to six levels. So that just establishes an understanding of how far you can get on that property without going any further. And you can, because the ownership is from the city. But that was just to establish a goal so we could calculate for that much. I don't think that's the end-all in terms of the number. That was just a number that
Okay.
was discussed.
I guess I thought we had done some parking analysis downtown and figured out, I mean, to me, it's like, I think we ought to know what we're trying to get to see if we've gotten there versus what fits on the property. But it doesn't sound like we have that. I do like the looks of the building. I thought that was very nice. One of the thoughts I had when I looked at it was, does it match the expansion to the building? Because I know we're going to do this big rounded edge and, you know, like, are they all going to speak to each other? I'm hoping, like, we're coordinating all of that together.
There would be an intent to coordinate.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly in the finishes and materials.
One thing I thought was kind of strange and possibly expensive was the pedestrian bridge connection to the second floor of the building. You don't really see that too often, you know, like a pedestrian connection like up at the second floor. And then the other thought was, we're spending a ton of money to secure and force everybody to go through the first floor at the front. And then now we're going to make a connection on the side of the building on the second floor. Like, how does security work with that? Because we've pushing everybody down here and going through security, and then now we're going to say, oh, come in that side. So that was kind of strange. And then the other question I had was kind of the most difficult one. Save that for last. So when you look on the property appraiser, we own all this property. You know, this is all City of St. Cloud property where they're proposing this. But what if the parking garage moved south behind the hotel? Because we already own this property. It's secured. It's our property. And, you know, the city is growing. City Hall is going to need expansion. Whatever facilities we need. I feel like, what if this parking garage slid south a block and took the whole block? Maybe go reach out to the hairdresser business and Mr. Lewis and see, you know, maybe you could, those are the only two properties that aren't city owned there. And, you know, give them an option to be like, hey, we're going to put retail on the first floor. Can we buy your building and, you know, provide you a space in this building? Or maybe they are just to the point that they would sell their building. I don't know. But if we moved it south of 10th Street, that would keep all of this property to be city property for the future expansion and needs of City Hall.
That'd be an interesting study. Councilmember Trace.
Well, okay, I have a lot of the same questions, comments. So thank you for putting the massing study together, because that tells a lot, and that kind of is kind of feeding into some of my comments of the scale of a 6-story garage, especially with the retail component, because the retail component, just looking at the height of things, took another 7 feet of height. So
Yeah,
the whole thing got taller.
It's a
because-
bit taller. You want that extra height, yes.
So part of it is, I don't want us being landlords, because government's the worst landlord in my mind. So I know at some point, I don't know if it was discussed with us, the design standards that were put into this, or the design criteria, but I don't really want retail in this. If we're gonna do a retail building or a different building, that whole block south of it, behind the hotel, maybe we just do a whole retail building there, then all the parking's across the street here, so it's one whole, like, retail/office building itself, and then the parking garage is separate, instead of having that little site. If we ever sell it or do a joint venture with someone, has to have some parking, has to have some building. But just the retail thing, to me, I'm not the biggest fan of. Same kind of thing with the pedestrian bridge is kind of a nice to have, not a need to have in my mind. The location of it and sliding it down, I was kind of thinking the same thing of just let's have extra room for the building to expand. But I guess we do have room on this side in the extra blue box here, but then we can also get rid of that parking lot on the east side of the building and expand the building out that way. So like the building will just both wings of the building will expand to expand the building more. So I was going down the same path of let's move it, or even bridge over 10th Street, but then that became
That would be
costly
cool.
and.
That would
yeah.
be cool. But I guess to tag on to what you're
Yeah.
saying, if you don't mind, my comment is the land is going to be gone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The land will be gone and we won't have any options. Where it's like if we keep what we already have north of 10th as like a city complex, we have that, and then we move the parking garage into this other piece, then we still stay whole for the future for whatever needs we need. But the land will be gone eventually, like, and it won't be an option.
Well, and on the whole moving it thing, I did have a thought of moving it east to the parking lot on the other side of the VFW, and just doing that whole, because it would be closer to New York and Pennsylvania and all, the nighttime traffic that would be using it, not just the daytime traffic.
True.
But that's changing everything. So I also didn't understand why the no parking on the ramps, because that just killed a lot of the utility of the
Sure.
of the
And
garage
I think
itself.
that's why Walker Engineering looked at that both ways, because there is useful space on there to get. So and these are the things that would become part of sort of the criteria to move forward. All of these discussions, and then looking at where exactly it should be placed and what is the best position for that. There's time to look at that, although we understand that you're moving forward with the entryway relatively quickly, and that's going to take away some of your parking, I think, because of laydown area that's going to be used. So things need to move around a little bit, but yeah, the study can certainly be amplified to look at that.
And then, if we built the full length of the building, is it possible to build 2 or 3 stories now, then add stories on later, or is that not
How do
possible?
you feel about that?
There's constructability of that with precast.
Vertical expansions of an existing parking garage is certainly feasible. There's a lot of challenges associated with it, though, upfront costs associated with it, liability in the future, and not to mention you'll have to shut down that garage when you do go to vertically expand it. It's not a question of if it can be done, is it logical? And typically we find most owners are interested in just doing the full build out during the initial phase because it saves money, and they don't have to worry about trying to shut down that parking in the future. So definitely can be done. It's just doesn't make sense.
I was looking for a quick, good answer, and that's what I was looking for. Okay. So yeah, so to me, I'm not the biggest fan of the retail. It's expensive. It's a constraint on the garage design that just, in my mind, costs way more than it's worth. The extra 7 feet of height, just with the scale and massing of downtown, and just the extra cost of it as well. I'd like to park on ramp and just get as much parking as possible in this initial phase, at least. Massing, utility. And then, I assume your last question was funding, but we'll save that for the end. Was that going to be your last question? Oh, okay. So, funding of how do we pay for it is kind of another question I'll have once everyone else has their design type questions.
Mr. Lodi?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment to Member Matheny's about moving it south. As far as the location of it, and if you look at now where the city is, I mean, that's a better location, I think, 'cause it's more central, where this is back in this corner by our city building where, a block south. It's more central for our downtown of what it is now. So, just comment.
Mr. Askew?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm okay with the retail. I've been to lots of parking garages where I see it. If it comes down to cost, if it can go away, that's great. But, if you asked me 3 years ago about retail there, I would have said, yeah, maybe not. But if you look at our downtown now, good luck trying to find a place that's available. They're pretty much gone. So that could add. It could also be flexible for our tax collector. Maybe we get tax collector out of the city hall. Maybe we try to build something for him there. And then maybe even planning. If they get built out here, they can go over there. Gives a little bit of flexibility. I like the location. Looks good to me. I'm also open to different ideas. I like all the ideas that are being thrown around here, but in the crosswalk over, isn't that to the expansion one? So that's not going to happen until we get hit to the second part of the expansion. So, in that parking garage, if you actually stretch it all the way down to 8th Street, that's almost double in size. So, I mean, we still have a ton of land going north
Right,
there.
north,
So,
uh-huh.
and I like Trace's idea of, like, I think at one time, the expansion of City Hall was actually going to be going east along 9th Street over to Pennsylvania Avenue, so. Very nice drawings, by the way, too. It's really easy to understand, and I appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, in terms of retail, and it doesn't have to be retail, but some activity at grade level just enhances the urban design aspects of whatever you do, whether it's on this side, but the other side. And if you want to separate that, there's the possibility that if it moves at all, that you create something in front of it that allows activity, and then you have your garage, just from a separation standpoint. But this is something that happens often nowadays. You try to incorporate a little bit of something that allows to maintain that sort of city street and not, it's a garage. We all know it's a garage, but, so.
Yeah, to me, it's just the cost of, could you
Yes.
even lease that for something?
Sure.
You'd still have to build out, this was just shelled space, right? So you'd still
Yes,
have to build it
yes.
out, you'd still have to lease to someone, tenant
Correct.
improvement, and it's like, would you ever make any money on it? But you're also giving up almost a full deck height, or a full story of height on the garage for that, so it's.
Right.
Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. Somebody had mentioned this to me, and I don't know the answer, Mr. Manzares. How many people have to live in town before you have to have, isn't there like some population number that you have to have a courthouse?
Not that I'm
Okay,
aware
so
of.
there's not any, we're not gonna hit some kind of population threshold at 75,000 people or whatever that's gonna cause us to have more services or anything?
No.
Okay.
Not from the municipal perspective.
Okay, but yeah, I've said my point. I think we ought to leave this part as for future city hall business. But the other thing I was thinking about, and I didn't say, and I don't know whether this is a good idea or not, but I'm just gonna say it because y'all will tell me whether it's crazy. But I was thinking, like, gosh, it'd be kind of cool if you had retail on the bottom and then maybe like condos that people could live in, on the second floor, and then have parking above that. Like, I lived in a building in North Carolina in uptown Charlotte where it was like retail on the bottom, so you had restaurants and stuff, and then you had like, condos, and then parking was all in like one building.
Class A office space, is that what you're looking for?
I'm sure the retail and that, but it's like, it'd be cool to get, I know you need people in the city center to feed the businesses, to keep, things open, but I like where we're headed. I think it could easily, at this conceptual stage, be moved around.
Well, I certainly like some of the ideas that Ms. Matheny has thrown out about locating it behind the hotel there, but the question is, would we have enough space to do that? And here we're looking at,
It's the same space.
yeah,
If you go all,
I'd certainly,
It's a shorter run, isn't it?
you know,
It's a shorter block.
yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 blocks now, right, because of 9th?
Yeah, it's 9th, goes underneath there.
Yeah.
What is the timeline on building something of this nature? Concrete's got to dry.
Typically with any building, I would say no less than 12 months. It's about the shortest you're going to see it in. Something like this, I'd say 12 to 14 months, though, is probably about where we're going to be at. You have a lot of architecture on the outside that we have to consider, but I don't see any reason it couldn't be done that quickly. It's also going to depend on what you build it out of. Like I mentioned, cast in place is going to take longer,
Right.
but precast would be a little more rapid construction. And that's just for the construction. There's still design time ahead of that has to be considered as part of the schedule. So,
Mayor.
Yes.
What did you mean about down the road, there's going to be more cost to cast and
Sure.
Precast?
yeah. So to kind of explain it a little bit better, precast construction is essentially pieces that are cast off-site, brought to the site, and erected in place. There's a high number of connections and joints in that type of construction, and all those joints get protected with like a polyurethane or a silicone sealant in order to protect those connections that are within the joint. the connections are the structural connection for the building, so you have to replace that sealant periodically. You know, roof levels, every 5 to 7 years, that sealant has to come out and be replaced. Lower floors, every 10 to 12 years, that sealant has to be replaced, or otherwise the connection starts to be compromised. You know, the connections can be protected with like a high-performance coating, or it can be stainless steel, which helps, offset the amount of time that you have to actually do maintenance on it. But the precast garages just have more maintenance associated with it. A cast-in-place garage is all monolithic, so there's no joints in it. There's, a little bit of sealant to maintain, but nothing nearly as much as a precast garage would have in it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Interesting. Any other questions?
Ms. Matheny, did you ask your last one? You said you had one more.
I think,
I'm done.
Okay. I just have a funding question of, I don't know if Wendy has like a
How the heck we're
performa
gonna
for
pay
us.
for it?
that would be the next thing.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Colazzo come up. Obviously, I would like to see us use CRA funding and borrow against that funding we receive as part of that mechanism. The other one is we have about $18 million in transportation impact fees that would be eligible to use for this parking garage also. Obviously, we don't want to drain that account down by spending that whole amount on this, so I think there's a combination of things we can look at. But again, we wanted to get this in front of you and get those ideas, and I'll go through those right at the end here and just make sure before we move forward, looking at that, what the actual cost is going to be.
Ms. Colazzo?
Wendy Colazzo, Finance Director, City Manager. Just kind of summarize the strategy. We do have mobility, but however, as you're aware, we have other projects coming to Bay. We are looking at other opportunities that are roadway projects that could easily eat up that glorious amount that we're talking about right now. We've strategized with the CRA to use some funding right now. We were going to talk about another $400,000 allocation for this parking. Obviously, originally the $5 million dream is gone at 11 and a quarter. So we have some options, and they're going to be multi-funded options. Very minimal from the general fund because we are at Bay, but CRA, some building fund, we talked about that because of the usage. So we have to develop that now as we get a little bit better numbers. And we right now just doing the numbers, and Councilman Trace doing numbers as well. We put it up at 29 already with construction costs going up with joint steel, concrete, and raw materials. So.
You put it up at 29, what does that mean?
space.
29 million?
Per space.
29,000 per
Per
okay.
space,
Nope.
yes, ma'am.
I know, I was like, what does that mean?
So we'll have like a 20% buffer just in case and see if we can catch this curve with the general supply and demand right now as the economy outlays. So that's the plan. I will.
Any question? Thank you very much.
Mayor,
Yes.
could I just summarize some of the things I heard from the board? First off, restrooms, if we could look at having restrooms.
That's smart.
Secondly, Member Matheny talked about a parking analysis. I believe we did one of those back in 2017, but I think we need to dust it off and literally get a hard number on what we're really going to need, and also look at the future and kind of do a little planning and say, okay, we think we're going to have this much expansion, so we don't end up in 5 years having to build another parking garage or expand this one. So we'll try to hit that number. Park on ramp, and also investigate the possibility of moving it behind the hotel and talking to the two property owners there to see if they'd be interested in selling their property.
And event space?
An event space, yes, thank you, Mr. Ashley.
Right.
Did we make a decision on retail or not?
I like retail.
I like retail.
I'd like to get more information on
Can
how
we
it's
bring
worked
back the
and
cost
how
of the
it's working.
retail?
Yeah.
Maybe look at
I'm
some
open to that.
Yeah.
venues. I like the retail.
So, okay, we'll take a look at that and see if we can get some best practices and.
And then there was mention of the dumpsters in the garage. Was that dumpsters for the retail, or was that dumpsters for downtown?
I don't.
It was
know.
in
Mr.
the backup
Alvarez,
somewhere.
Thank you.
Both, in a way. Right now, there are dumpsters located on that side of the street that are supplying, which is the restaurant that's right across?
Breeze?
That's right. So they have it there, but it would also be for the garage. It's large enough to take care of several dumpsters along the alley side. So-
Okay, yeah, well, it's just one of those it's my worry of some of those design constraints if you have to pull it out and it increases the height of the structure.
Right, so right now, the way we had it, there's plenty of room for that.
Okay.
So that needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we could just move those dumpsters to 2 parking spots over here instead, and then we don't have to have the height of the garage
Possible.
be dictated by the park. Okay.
Any other questions? Anything else? Ms. Matheny?
One more thing. Think about if we're going to do retail, think about where the mailboxes are going to go. I am in this like 2-year-long conversation about this at work after the fact the building was constructed. So just think about where the mailboxes are going to be.
All right. Anything else? I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for your input this afternoon. We're going to move forward with our agenda at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this, our next item on our agenda is the Downtown Revitalization Phase 2 update.
Good evening. Benestina Cuevas. I'm the project manager for the City of St. Cloud. Here, there's my update. So at this moment, we have the plans, the final plans are ready, and our big documents also, but they're under review with FDOT. We're waiting for their final approval. We had some comments for the big documents. We submitted our final draft, and I'm really working closely with them to see if we can get it final approved to go out to bid. If we get that everything back this month, we'll be ready to go out for bid in October, and hopefully we can advertise and award it by November, and start the construction in January after the holidays as previously requested. So if we start construction in January, we're looking to be completed around the summer, by the end of the summer, hopefully, with the materials and labor working with us. So that's where we are right now. Any questions?
Councilman Raskin.
I'm not sure this is a question for you, but we do need to address how we are going to lay down those bricks. We're definitely having some challenges with New York.
Yes.
And I know there's 3 different ways we could have done it, but concrete probably would, or something a little bit harder in there.
Well, my understanding is that from phase 1, most of our issues are with the historical pavers. We're not using that. In this phase, we're using only the pine hole pavers, and we are looking to follow more the manufacturers. We got in contact with the manufacturer, and we are sure that, if we get closer and we pay more attention to the construction and the manufacturers, it shouldn't fail. But most of our failures, is my understanding, is where the historic pavers were used.
Okay. Councilman Matheny.
Thank you. Along Mr. Askew's point, it kind of looks like our street sweeper goes down. Does our street sweeper go down? You would know, Mr. Askew. Do you see him driving up and
I
down
haven't seen them come down the street.
the brick pavers? Because if you look at the road, there's like a perfect, 4 5 foot wide swath where there's no sand. So I'm just wondering if our street sweepers go down there and are vacuuming out the sand.
We'll-
So just
We'll take a look at that.
just take a
and-
look at that too, because it's just like a perfect. If you look, it's like a perfect line. I'm like, I think the street sweepers are going down this,
Sucking up all the
sucking
sand.
up all the sand.
I'm not going to repeat what I said to Mr. Askew yesterday when we came back from the state of the county about the road. So I got the new public works director going to look at it and see if he's got an idea how we can, fix that, because it's definitely getting bad again.
Right.
Can we look at the design book from 100 years ago and do it the same way? Because some of those
Yeah.
brick roads are
Yeah, clay,
built in steel, so
sandy loam. Okay.
Any other questions?
just brick on hard pan, I guess.
Yes.
If not, thank you very much. We certainly
Thank
look
you.
forward to that project moving forward.
Thank you.
The next item is the VFW Exterior Improvements Project.
Once again, I'm John Davis, city architect. We had asked CT Shu to come up with a render for the auxiliary building to try to resemble the existing train station, and they did provide us with this rendering. I have been in touch with the post and the commander, and they have the rendering. They reviewed it. I never got a response back whether they liked it or not, but they did want to know what a cost estimate was to do the work. And I provided them a quick cost estimate between $90,000 and $100,000 to be able to do the work. It's about excuse me, about half of that's for the roof, and the other half is for the new vestibule and the new siding on the building.
Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. So I brought this idea up to the city manager. We went over and took a tour of the building, and I was saying how cool the train station is, and I wish there was a way that, you know, we could work with the VFW to get the other building to speak to the train station and not just be, you know, bluntly like a plain, ugly concrete block building. And so then that's where we were able to move this forward, and CT Shu worked with the VFW, and we actually do have the commander here. If we could have him come up and talk about it, because I believe they've already voted on it and have taken some steps. And also, I would like if he could give like a brief kind of synopsis of all that they do for the community, because there's a lot of, you know, donation of space and time and energy and effort that the VFW pours back into the community as well.
Commander, would you like to speak?
Good evening. How's everybody? Rafael De Jesus, I'm the commander of the VFW. I think you guys, I met all of you before. I just want to say thank you for the rendering. I didn't get a chance to speak to you after that. So on Monday, we took a vote from our membership, and everybody's excited. We voted we like the rendering. We would love to move forward with the project. But I also want to let the city council know, people don't realize how much we donate to the community. So in the current space that we're talking about right now, we have the Rotary Club, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, small business group, a church. Probably missing another 2 or 3 meetings that they conduct in that business. In that location, free of charge. We don't charge them. We reserve the revenue days are Friday and Saturday. Every other day we provide it for free. For the city, anybody that requests it, if it's community based, we're okay with it. And I just want to let the city, you guys know that we're going to continue to provide that service as long as we could do it. But the building is in need of improvement. The outside is unfinished, and it will be an asset to the city, I think, if we could go ahead and do something like that.
Awesome.
With that being said, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Matheny.
Yes, so I think I brought this up at a previous CRA meeting where, you know, this is right at the doorstep of City Hall, and we're, you know, spending all the money to try to help, you know, New York Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, and then this is, you know, right at our doorstep. Miss Paula Stark got it on the historic register, the train station, so there's all kinds of cool stuff, and they've spent a lot of money renovating the other building, the I don't know what you call it, the canteen, not the bar, the other side.
The auxiliary building.
Yeah, the auxiliary buildings. They've spent a lot of time and money, and so then I think we talked about it as, is there a way that we could help, since this I feel like would reflect good on our downtown, and I don't really know. I've heard them say $90,000 to $100,000 is the estimate for the improvements.
Right, that's my estimate for the construction only. That doesn't include
For the
any
design.
design fees that would have to be added to it, but for the construction was roughly between 90 and 100,000.
Is architecture like engineering, like it's 10% of the?
For this
cost?
case, it would probably fall in that range. I don't want to speak for an architect, but because it's all exterior siding and a new roof, it would be a lower percentage than if you were remodeling the whole facility.
So I guess my question to the rest of the CRA board is, and the city manager would be like, how can we keep it moving forward?
I would say just give me direction to do the design work. And, you know, we do have fund balance available, and we've already put a line item in there for this project. Like I said, we didn't put it in the design work, but we do have the money available in the CRA funds to do that.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
So I would like to see it continue moving forward. And I know Rafi, when he had his meeting, he had told me that they've created like a separate, and he could maybe say this more eloquently, but they've created a separate group internal to the VFW to be able, like, authorized to make decisions and keep the project moving forward. So, like, It's not gonna have to wait all the time for it to get back to like a meeting once a month. Like they've created a system to try to keep the, momentum going from their perspective as well.
Member Trace?
Thank you. So this is like our BSIG program, right? Like our building facade improvement. And was the issue that nonprofits aren't eligible? I thought we had an issue with that at one
Yeah,
point.
that was what, I actually said that at several CRA meetings ago, and subsequently, since they provide those services to the community, I've checked with Mr. Manzares, we think it's eligible for CRA funding.
Okay. So like all not, because there's a couple other buildings that nonprofits have that probably need a little
And
sprucing as well.
Well, and I actually talked to the city manager about that because I said, like if we do this for the VFW, then I feel like we have to be prepared to do this for other buildings as well, and I don't think that's a bad thing,
Yeah.
so.
Is there, in our normal BSIG stuff, isn't it like 50% of each bucket? They put money in for part of the plumbing, we put in money
Right.
for part of the plumbing or whatever. So is that the same method we're going to use for this, or is it, we're looking to fully fund this? I just don't want to start a precedent
No.
of like, we're doing everyone's everything.
And I did mention to Rafi that typically there is kind of a proportionate share, but I wasn't sure of the specifics for it, and I don't know what the specifics would be for this as well.
Okay. I just don't want to start.
Well, I think there's two things. So CRA and then BSIG, I think we definitely should start looking at how we put some of that money aside for those enhancements for those nonprofits. But since we are a soldier city and it does enhance City Hall and in this area right here, I would recommend we fund the whole project from design and the construction part.
Now, would it be follow the rules with the CRA and then, general fund pays for portion, or?
I would recommend we totally fund it out of CRA, and like I said, we do have the funds available to do that.
Okay.
Well, that'll certainly be a good project for our new CRA director and you to work on together, so.
Welcome.
Is that good?
Are we good with this at this point?
I support the
Well,
full
right now you're
funding.
looking for direction because we're going to have to bring some items back to get funding.
I support the full funding for the veterans and Soldier City with our CRA dollars.
I would support that as well, as long as we have funding from Wendy.
Right.
Is that all we need, just a consensus?
Yeah, at this point, you're going to.
She waved me off, so.
Do we have any objections to that?
Wendy Colazzo, Finance Director. Just some clarification, so we're talking about apples to apples. The Florida statute requirement that we needed to do for fund balance has that, so do you want that presented later or now? Because that includes VFW. You're projected at 840,000 in fund balance that we need to allocate, but I don't see it on this agenda, and I didn't want them to approve something that's fund balance
Right.
for that
so-
statute, so how do you want to do it? So you can.
Can we allocate this money now at direction of the CRA board and then come back at a future meeting for the rest of the fund balance?
Yes, sir.
Because, I mean, we have plans for that. I just haven't had a chance to present it to the board yet.
Yes, sir. I had Internet Forbes provided what to allocate towards, so if you just want to focus on the VFW, we can do that
Tonight.
now for record.
And you can go ahead and talk about some of the other things we talked about in that fund balance so they have situational awareness.
No.
Yes.
All right, sir. So
Wait, so are we good? Or we're waiting on her?
I just wanted her to give the
Summary.
expectation, and then I'd like to move forward tonight with the VFW funding, the design and the construction work, just kind of earmark some money for that.
So just for the record, to make the board aware, the unaudited fund balance projection is 840,000. So we got with the CRA, with Internet Forbes, with the consensus of the city manager, what to allocate that to. 400,000 going to the parking facility, 100,000 to the VFW, and I'm going to grab my notes for the third one, and we will be balanced at 840,000, because my memory does not serve me, if you can excuse me.
I can help her memory. So one of the things I'm going to recommend, we're working with, I just can't get Albert with the hotel. I would like to see if we can
I was
help
gonna bring
him
that up.
put some money to finish the hotel. He's supposed to be in town in the next couple of weeks. He got his visa, and I'd like to sit down with him as GC and see what we can do. And then we'd have to obviously lien the building. If we loaned them that money, I wouldn't be a grant, it would be a loan.
Thank you, sir.
Was that
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir. That
All
was
right, thanks.
$343,771 for the St. Cloud Hotel roof, requested to be issued as a loan. Yes, sir. Total would be $840K allocated to those three projects.
So do we have a consensus on fully funding the VFW project if it,
I'm fine funding the design until we figure out how much it costs. Because if it's $300,000, then we're
Well,
not.
can we just say with the numbers that are provided, we've approved it for the numbers that are provided for
Right.
construction?
And where does that, so that's just with the budget that was going to be presented tonight, we had $800,000 in excess. We were looking for a home.
Yes, sir. And 100,000 of that would be allocated for the VFW construction cost. If you're looking for design, that would come from operational, if you'd like that, and we could do that. This was just to record the fund balance, and you're okay with awarding it towards the VFW.
are we in agreement?
I would-
I
I mean, you
saw,
got three of us, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
I would hope that some of the folks on the engineering side would help out with the VFW. We're not gaining anything other than a pretty building in here, so I'm just hoping that somebody would come forward and try to help us out with that, so we can keep the costs down. We can help out the VFW and have a great building in the process. So,
Architect, you mean?
architect, designer, whatever.
All right, so you have a consensus?
yes, thank
on
you.
that? Are we ready for any more information? Do you have more information for us, Ms. Colazo?
I think she's next up anyway for financials.
Yes, if I'm
Board
next,
has
yes,
no
sir.
more questions.
Wendy Colazzo, Finance Director, reporting for, and as of September 30th, 2021, we have come to the end of fiscal year 2021. These are unaudited financials. These are revenue and other sources. A total of $1,349,628 was budgeted for fiscal year 2021, with actual realization of $3,906,478. That's also been appropriated year-to-date with a excess of $2,556,643. The reason for the excessive, or what seems excessive balance, is because that is the allocation for the downtown Phase 2 contribution. So just wanted to note that for you. That is restricted money. In the expenditures and other sources, we are budgeted again at $3,939,888. With expended up to October, September, we are closing down fiscal year and period 12 tomorrow. Therefore, this is up to the point of these reports, which was $3,067,271. As you can see, the different designations between the personnel cost, operating, and the capital outlay. And in your other uses, there is your $2,500,000 for that downtown Phase 2 allocation. $3,067,271 has been allocated as expended, and your balance, after all is said and done, $871,817. With projected until we are audited, that is the $840 we are saying will go to fund balance, and we just spoke about. That is the bi-monthly financials for September 30th, 2021 through that, unaudited for your review. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions? We don't need to vote or approve these minutes, do we?
Just a report.
All right, thank you. The next item is our calendar, our meeting calendar for the remainder of the year into 2022. Are there any questions about that calendar? If not, we shall receive that. At this point, we'll receive any updates from our members. Ms. Matheny, Mr. Askew?
I'd like to ask the question about extending out our CRA with the county. Is that something we can look into? We've talked about it before, a couple years in the past, about asking the county if we can extend it farther out. I don't know if that's a board member decision or that's direct and bill to Mr. Sturgeon to do it?
Well, he would want some direction to look into that, sure, and move forward that process. There was some discussion about expanding it too at one point, so.
I think that's what he's talking about.
Well, yeah, I know the expansion part got sort of shot down because we tried to put Stevens Plantation in that area, and I don't think that they even wanted to look at it. I didn't have all the details to it, but yeah, if we wanted to extend it out wherever our JPA goes or following 192 out that way.
Okay, so you're talking about the expansion
The
of
time?
the
I think he's
geographic area.
Oh, I'm
Time.
sorry.
You're thinking
time.
extension,
Yeah, I'm
thinking
trying to
time.
extend the CRA out farther. I think it was
Okay.
to 2035 or something like that, 2032.
I can look into both those issues and report back to you.
So you're talking about the time?
Yeah,
Both.
trying to extend, our CRA is going to come to an end, and then we have the ability to extend it out now and push it farther out by asking the county for that.
Yes.
Expanding the CRA, that's a whole nother ballgame, but I think we were trying to do both at the same time.
So we want to take the timeline out,
Let's take the
Yeah.
time.
because it's hard to bond stuff for 8, 9 years.
Right, I'm trying to bring it up because if you're going for a parking garage and you want to
Right.
bond that, they're gonna like to see that that goes way out here, not just here, so.
I think that's a good tool to have the conversation about extending the
Yep, that's a good.
timeline is the parking garage. I
Okay.
think that's a good tool.
And just another thing, just jogged in my head, I did talk to the county about using some TDT dollars for the parking garage also.
Awesome.
Just discussion, but I did mention it.
Good. Are there any objections to extending the timeline?
Part of our agreement is different than most too. We have like a defined dollar amount, not an actual TIF. So I didn't know if that's part of the conversation as well of, I think for the, for
Have we
2008 to now, like, we were probably in the good because
Worked.
values went down, but we still got the same amount. So I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna bring that up.
Yeah, it's like out of the goodness of their heart, they've been giving us the money,
Yeah.
even though the differential wasn't there. I don't know if we've caught up with it yet.
But obviously, when you approach the county, since we do have to get their permission, that opens up the door for all those discussions.
Right.
Okay. So we agree on that?
Good, yep.
Mr. Trace, you have anything? Mr. Lodi?
Good.
Is there anyone out in the public that wants to speak? If not, it comes to our information section. Ola at the park, Saturday, October the 30th. St. Cloud Cyclovia, Friday, November the 5th. And our next CRA meeting will be Thursday, December the 2nd. If there's nothing else, we will be adjourned.
Hola. Hola in the park.